The capital planet of the Galactic Union was a marvel of advanced technology and interstellar cooperation, a hub where the cultures and species of 1,000 worlds converged. The skyline stretched endlessly, dotted with towering spires that gleamed like precious metals under the light of 3 suns. Streams of airborne traffic weaved effortlessly between the skyscrapers, carrying dignitaries, workers, and travelers from every corner of the galaxy. The planet's sprawling streets, lined with glowing walkways and alien flora, bustled with life, an endless sea of beings, each unique in form, language, and purpose. In this vast metropolis, one figure stood out as she stepped off a sleek transport ship. Judge Isabella Cade, the only human member of the prestigious Galactic Judicial Tribunal, moved with purpose through the spaceport. Her crisp judicial robes, tailored to her tall, lithe frame, marked her as an arbiter of law in this vast interstellar coalition. Her stride was confident, her presence commanding, yet the eyes that followed her betrayed a mix of curiosity, respect, and lingering suspicion. For humans, acceptance into the Galactic Union had been an uphill battle. The First Contact Wars, fueled by misunderstandings and territorial disputes, had left scars on both humanity and the galaxy. But over time, through diplomacy and sheer resilience, humans had carved out a place among the stars. Isabella's position as a judge was a symbol of that hard-won trust, a rare honor earned through her reputation for unwavering integrity and a fearlessness that few dared to match. Today, her mission was more than symbolic. She was here to preside over a case that had captivated the attention of the Union. Ilvora Industries, one of the galaxy's most influential megacorporations, was accused of exploiting the Arvian people, a vulnerable and underdeveloped species, to strip mine their planet for rare minerals. The case had the potential to set a precedent, challenging the unchecked greed of powerful entities and reaffirming the Galactic Union's commitment to justice for all its members. As Isabella descended from the transport, her communicator buzzed with updates. The courthouse loomed ahead, its imposing structure carved from obsidian-like stone, symbolizing the weight of justice. Her expression remained calm, but her mind was sharp, running through the intricacies of the case and anticipating the arguments that lay ahead. She had barely taken a dozen steps toward the courthouse when a formation of heavily armed soldiers emerged, their imposing figures blocking her path. They were Shasari, a reptilian species known for their towering frames and fierce loyalty. Their leader, a muscular figure clad in shimmering black armor, stepped forward. His scaled face betrayed no emotion as he raised a clawed hand to halt her. Judge Isabella Cade, his deep, gravelly voice echoed, "You are barred from entering the courthouse under orders of a higher authority." The bustling streets grew quiet, the curious onlookers sensing the gravity of the moment. Isabella paused, her sharp brown eyes locking onto the Shasari commander. Despite the towering soldiers and their menacing energy weapons, she remained composed. "On whose authority?" she asked, her tone calm but unyielding. The commander remained silent, his posture rigid. Around him, the soldiers tightened their grip on their weapons. It was clear this was no ordinary security protocol. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The tension in the air was palpable, as if the very foundations of the Union's ideals were being tested. Isabella's gaze swept over the barricade before her, her mind already piecing together the implications. Someone powerful wanted this case silenced, and they were willing to go to extraordinary lengths to ensure it. Isabella squared her shoulders, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "This courthouse belongs to the people of the Galactic Union, not to those who would twist its purpose for their gain. If you think you can bar me from my duty, you are gravely mistaken." The Shasari soldiers didn't flinch. The commander's silence was all the confirmation Isabella needed. This was no mere procedural delay. It was the first move in a dangerous game, a game she was determined to win. The heavy presence of the Shasari soldiers outside the courthouse was no mere intimidation tactic, it was a calculated act of defiance against the very principles Isabella had sworn to uphold. As she turned away, the weight of the moment pressed on her. This was more than a barrier to entry. It was a message. Her first instinct was to contact the Galactic Tribunal, the governing body of law and justice that had appointed her. She stepped into a quieter alcove of the bustling plaza, activating her communicator with a sharp command. The device buzzed and blinked, but instead of connecting, it displayed a frustrating message: system under maintenance. The timing was too coincidental. Someone had anticipated her response and cut off her lifeline. Her frustration was interrupted by the sharp tone of a nearby news broadcast. Turning toward a holographic screen hovering in the plaza, she saw her own image plastered across the alien media. A polished, multi-limbed reporter spoke in rapid Frelkani dialect, but the subtitles in Galactic Standard were clear: allegations of corruption against human judge Isabella Cade, unfit for judicial authority. Her chest tightened. The story was a fabrication, a smear campaign designed to discredit her and sow doubt about her position. Worse, the narrative was spreading like wildfire, and the gathered crowd began murmuring in low voices. Suspicion, always simmering beneath the surface for humans in the Union, was now being stoked into flames. Isabella's jaw clenched. She knew this wasn't just about her. The stakes were far greater. The Arvian case had the potential to expose systemic exploitation, threatening not only Ilvora Industries but also the powerful figures who benefited from its profits. This wasn't an attack on a single human judge, it was an assault on the integrity of the Galactic Union itself. As she navigated the streets away from prying eyes, her communicator buzzed again. This time, the voice on the other end was familiar but strained. Isabella, it's Lorvel. Magistrate Lorvel, a Frelkani colleague from the tribunal, spoke in hurried whispers. You're in danger. I've heard whispers your safety can't be guaranteed. They want you gone, and they're willing to escalate. Who is they? Isabella demanded, but Lorvel hesitated. I can't say more over this line. Leave the capital while you still can. Trust me. But Isabella didn't run. That wasn't in her nature. Instead, she delved deeper, driven by a resolve forged in her years as a prosecutor on Earth. Her instincts, honed during the chaotic aftermath of the First Contact Wars, told her that the truth was buried beneath layers of deception. And if no one else would dig for it, she would. Returning to her quarters, she activated a secure terminal. Galactic Union systems were among the most sophisticated in the known universe, but humanity's knack for innovation had taught her a few tricks. She bypassed the surface-level security protocols, tunneling into restricted planetary records. It was slow work, each layer of encryption was tougher than the last, but she pressed on, her focus unbroken. Finally, she struck gold. Buried in encrypted communications logs, she found fragments of evidence linking the Shah-Sari soldiers' orders to the Galactic Council itself. The messages were carefully worded but unmistakable. The orders to bar her from the courthouse had come from individuals with the power to manipulate the tribunal and suppress the case. It was worse than she'd feared. This wasn't just about protecting Ilvora Industries, it was a coordinated effort to silence her and bury the truth. As she leaned back in her chair, the full weight of the conspiracy began to dawn on her. This wasn't just a legal battle, it was a fight for the soul of the Galactic Union. And for Isabella Cade, retreat was not an option. Isabella knew she couldn't fight this battle alone. The forces arrayed against her were vast and deeply entrenched within the Galactic Union's political machinery. To confront them, she needed allies, individuals who shared her commitment to justice and who had the courage to stand against corruption. Her first contact was Kalenth, an Arvian whose testimony had initiated the case against Ilvora Industries. The small, bird-like alien was hesitant when Isabella reached out. His kind had suffered greatly under Ilvora's exploitation, whole families displaced, ecosystems destroyed, and their culture eroded. Kalenth's voice trembled as he spoke. If they find out I'm working with you, my people will pay the price. Isabella's tone was resolute but empathetic. They've already paid too much, Colinth. This is our chance to change that. If we stay silent now, they win. After a long pause, Colinth agreed to help. Next, Isabella reached out to Zarkesh, a fearless journalist whose reputation for exposing corruption had earned him both admiration and enemies. Zarkesh, a tall, multi-eyed Barixian, was already aware of the media smear campaign against Isabella. "They're painting you as the villain," he said, his voice laced with dry amusement. "Classic distraction tactics. But they've made one mistake: they think the truth can stay buried." Zarkesh agreed to broadcast any evidence Isabella uncovered, ensuring that the public would see what those in power wanted to hide. Finally, Isabella approached Yelrix, a Rogan technician renowned for his mastery of security systems and a certain disdain for authority. Yelrix grinned, his sharp teeth glinting under the dim light of his workshop as Isabella laid out her plan. "You want me to cripple their communications and sneak you past a barricade of Shasari soldiers? Sounds like a challenge. I like it." With her team assembled, Isabella began crafting a strategy. The first step was invoking an ancient Galactic Union law, the Protocol of Grievance. Unearthed from the Union's archives, it was a little-known regulation requiring the tribunal to convene immediately if a judge's safety was threatened or their ability to perform their duties obstructed. Filing the protocol was risky. It would draw attention to her situation and escalate the stakes, but it was a gamble she was willing to take. As Isabella prepared the formal documentation, Yelrix worked to disrupt the soldiers' communication networks. Using his expertise, he hacked into their systems and planted subtle glitches that would create confusion and delays when they attempted to coordinate their actions. Meanwhile, Colinth used his connections within the Arvian refugee community to arrange a covert route for Isabella to approach the courthouse. Smuggled through back alleys and service tunnels, she could avoid detection until the moment she was ready to confront the soldiers. Zarkesh played his part by amplifying the narrative. Through his network, he leaked hints of corruption within the Galactic Council, fueling public curiosity and building pressure on those in power. His broadcasts framed Isabella not as a rogue judge but as a champion for justice, standing against insurmountable odds. The pieces were falling into place. Isabella knew the confrontation ahead would be dangerous, but she also understood the power of truth and the strength of allies united in its pursuit. As the day of reckoning approached, she stood ready to face the storm. The plaza in front of the Galactic Courthouse was a sea of tension. Alien citizens of every shape and size had gathered, their curiosity piqued by the media buzz surrounding Isabella Cade. Hover drones from news outlets buzzed overhead, streaming the scene live across the Galactic Union. The courthouse, an imposing structure of black stone and glimmering lights, loomed in the background, a silent witness to the unfolding drama. Isabella emerged from the crowd, her judicial robes immaculate despite the chaos surrounding her. Her every step was deliberate, her expression resolute. The Shasari soldiers stood in her path, their towering forms a stark reminder of the barriers she faced, both literal and symbolic. Their commander stepped forward, his scaled face betraying no emotion as he raised a clawed hand. "Judge Cade," he rumbled, his voice carrying over the murmurs of the crowd, "turn back. This is your final warning." The plaza fell silent, every eye fixed on the confrontation. Isabella stopped just short of the barricade, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "By what authority do you deny me access to my court?" The commander remained silent, his stoic demeanor unyielding. "Your refusal to answer speaks volumes," Isabella continued, raising her voice so the crowd and the hovering cameras could hear. "The Galactic Union's laws are clear. Barring a judge without proof of treason is a violation punishable by removal of authority for those responsible. Do you wish to take responsibility for this unlawful act?" A ripple of uncertainty passed through the soldiers. They exchanged glances, their grips on their weapons tightening. The crowd began murmuring again, the tension mounting as Isabella's words took hold. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed across the plaza. From the shadows of the courthouse, a new figure emerged, Primarch Velsek, a prominent member of the Galactic Council. His tall, angular form and ornate robes exuded authority, but his arrival did not calm the crowd. Instead, the murmurs grew louder, tinged with suspicion. "Judge Cade," Velsek intoned, his voice smooth yet cold, "this spectacle serves no one. I strongly suggest you step aside for the sake of humanity's standing within the Union." Isabella's eyes narrowed. "You threaten Earth's membership because I refuse to abandon my duty? How far does your corruption extend, Primarch?" The crowd gasped, the accusation hanging heavily in the air. Velsek's expression hardened, but before he could respond, Isabella raised her communicator. "Citizens of the Galactic Union," she announced, her voice amplified by the device. "You deserve to know the truth." With a press of a button, she transmitted the encrypted files she had uncovered. The holographic screens around the plaza flickered, then displayed damning evidence, communications linking Velsek and other council members to Elvora Industries, detailing how they had profited from the exploitation of the Arvian people. The crowd erupted into chaos. Shouts of anger, disbelief, and demands for justice filled the air. The soldiers, realizing they were pawns in a larger scheme, hesitated, their resolve wavering. Velsek's calm ade cracked as he turned to the commander. "Seize her," he barked. But the soldiers didn't move. The evidence was undeniable, and the tide of public opinion had shifted. The crowd began chanting Isabella's name, their voices drowning out Velsek's protests. One by one, the soldiers stepped aside, clearing a path to the courthouse. Isabella didn't hesitate. With her head held high, she walked through the barricade, her presence a beacon of defiance. Behind her, the plaza roared with approval, the citizens galvanized by her courage and the revelations she had brought to light. The Galactic Union would never be the same. Inside the grand courtroom, silence fell as Isabella Cade took her place at the judge's podium. The chamber, carved from gleaming obsidian and lined with pulsating lights, radiated authority. Seated before her were representatives of the Galactic Tribunal, an assembly of beings from countless species, their faces reflecting a mixture of shock and anticipation. Elvora Industries' defense team sat rigid, their once confident demeanor replaced by unease. Primarch Velsek, stripped of his arrogant composure, now sat among the accused, his eyes darting nervously. The evidence Isabella had exposed had not only implicated the corporation but also unraveled a web of corruption that reached the highest echelons of the Galactic Council. Isabella opened the session with a voice that was steady and commanding. "The charges before this tribunal are unprecedented, both in scale and gravity. What we decide here today will define the future of justice within the Galactic Union." One by one, the pieces of evidence were presented. Holographic projections filled the chamber, showing intercepted communications, financial transactions, and testimony from witnesses like Kolenth. The Arvian whistleblower, small in stature but resolute in voice, described the devastation his people had endured: whole villages displaced, sacred lands destroyed, and countless lives shattered in the pursuit of profit. When the defense attempted to discredit him, Isabella intervened with a quiet ferocity. "The rights of the oppressed cannot be dismissed simply because their voices are inconvenient," she said, her words ringing with conviction. As the trial unfolded, it became clear that Elvora Industries and its allies had no viable defense. Their intricate schemes, once hidden behind layers of bureaucracy and misdirection, were laid bare for all to see. The tribunal's ruling was swift and decisive. Elvora Industries was found guilty of exploitation, ecological devastation, and gross violations of Galactic Union law. The company was fined astronomical reparations, with the funds directed toward rebuilding the Arvian homeworld. Primarch Velsek and other implicated council members were stripped of their positions and faced criminal prosecution for abuse of power and conspiracy. A series of sweeping reforms were ordered to prevent future corruption, including enhanced oversight of the Galactic Council and stricter protections for developing species. As the verdict was read, the courtroom erupted in applause. For the first time in recent memory, justice had triumphed over power and greed. After the session, Isabella stood on the courthouse steps, the plaza once again filled with citizens from across the galaxy. Cheers and chants of her name echoed through the air. Alien children waved banners, and reporters clamored for her attention. Yet amidst the celebration, Isabella's expression remained measured. A message had come through her communicator, a simple, encrypted note: "This is only the beginning. Be ready." Isabella pocketed the device, her gaze sweeping across the crowd. The battle for justice had been won, but the war against corruption and oppression in the Galactic Union was far from over. As she descended the steps, she reflected on the day's events. Humanity's place in the galaxy had shifted. No longer dismissed as newcomers, humans were now seen as champions of justice, capable of standing toe-to-toe with the galaxy's most powerful forces. For Isabella Cade, this was more than a victory. It was a promise that the fight for what was right would continue, no matter the odds.